Among many world's countries' beliefs, more than some of them possess some form of shape-shifting entity legends. Be it forest spirits, skinwalkers, witches, or deities, shapeshifters come from all cultures around the world and some are very diverse. Here, we'll take a look at a Nahual, a mysterious sorcerer class from old times Mexico that allegedly survived to this day, and we'll discuss the 3 phases one has to master before becoming a real Nahual. The following was related by an anonymous expert in paranormal matters, only known as the Doctor, frequently appearing on the YouTube show of host Paco Arias, who himself loves to indulge in the topic of paranormal matters. Here's what he had related so far. The level 1 Nahual is pretty similar to the wargs of Game of Thrones, much less flashy and experienced. They practice getting into the mind of the animal they resonate with and trying to see through its eyes, smell through its nose, feel what it feels, etc. At this point of time, they cannot control the actions of the animal in question, they do not command, nor manipulate it, but they can tap into its brainwaves in order to experience the world through them, as if they were in the back seat. The level 2 is where the sorcerer gets off their back seat and starts taking the wheel. The Nahual in training can now influence the behavior and actions of the animals which mind he or she accesses. Using their mind, they not only command, but also will the animal they created a bond with, to act on their behalf, be it following someone, gathering information, or even attacking someone, all while the sorcerer may be in their home, miles away. This growing connection is the result of increasing affinity with the energy, spirit, and nature of the animal the Nahual wishes to imitate. The level 3 goes further, but it progresses mostly because the practitioner petitions spirits outside of their own to facilitate a transformation. This is the point where the Nahual gains their signature ability. According to the Doctor, the spirits that are contacted to achieve such transformation can vary in their degree of dangerousness and hostility, and depending on the spirit, may ask for a gruesome thing in return for the power, like desecrating a grave, or killing a loved one. On a lighter note, not all Nahuales are evil, which means, not all witches who gain the power to shapeshift through the means of spirits of old Mexican lands, make pacts with spirits considered evil. There exists an understanding among the common people, that more powerful spirits in league with the sorcerers tend to often be the darker ones, hence why to many townspeople, Nahuales are considered the demonic ones. Regardless of whether a Nahual contact a good or a bad spirit, the art of this Mexican shapeshifting still remains very dangerous. It's because the sorcerers who learn to physically transform into the animals they form a bond with, also gain their behavior and instinct in human form. That means, they are as unpredictable and volatile as a wild animal, and even their human feelings and intellect may not be enough to quench these instincts. That's why the level 3 Nahuales prefer to live in seclusion, away from society, because they know how dangerous and unpredictable they have become, and in order to not accidentally hurt any of their friends or family members, they cut off from them completely. As they say, even power has consequences. There's indeed no occult power that does not require sacrifices, and I believe the Mexican Nahuales are a good proof of that. But that's not all. Many people see Nahuales differently. To Felipe Garneros, a director of official Nahual Museum in Oaxaca, these beings came to be, when Earth asked certain individuals to be her guardians. In communion with the ancient powers of the Earth itself, these selected few could transform into beings much larger and stronger than regular animals. If they would turn into a bull, that bull would be as huge as a truck, and if they transform into a wolf, or a dog, that wolf or dog would be the size of a horse. This way, Felipe says, the Nahuales could guard the land and the people, protecting them from evil, both spiritual and physical. He never says anything about this fraction of Nahuales having any levels, nor of them having to summon any spirits, aside the spirits of nature herself, to help them with transformation. In brutal contrast to Felipe's take on how Nahuales came to be as the benevolent guardians of nature, another man, calling himself a healer, going by the name Sir Pedro, and he believes Nahuales are a creation of a demonic force, a pact between a witch and a devil. Like Mr. Garneros, Sir Pedro does not differentiate in levels of becoming a Nahual, but like the Doctor, He also claims for the forces behind the transformation to be negative. He gives a vague, undetailed description of the ritual such which needs to perform to become one. It allegedly needs to be in a desolate place, at nighttime and on empty stomach. The practitioner would use lime juice to draw a pentagram on a floor, in front of an altar dedicated to malevolent entity they summon for the job. Inside the pentagram, they need to spill ash, and some of that ash they must use to draw smaller pentagrams in each arm of the bigger pentagram. Black candles need to be placed 5 inside the pentagram and 5 outside. The practitioner would strip down naked and stand in the middle of the pentagram, over the ash. As there's 15 minutes to midnight, an incantation, which Sir Pedro does not give, needs to be spoken over and over, until the clock hits midnight. Then, the sorcerer would kneel in the pentagram, in front of an altar, and await the transformation to begin. And the transformation would be a brutal one. The sorcerer needs to willingly reject their own body, and they must do so figuratively and literally. As they begin to transform, they must let their body go, their limbs, face or eyes etc. shall detach and fall off, they would feel their muscles tear, bones breaking and skin tearing away in incredible, excruciating pain. In this way, they shall transform into an animal. In opposition to what Mr. Garneros said, Sir Pedro claims that it can be as big as elephant, or as small as a mouse. It's because as the sorcerer transforms and their body falls apart, the animal form will be simultaneously forming underneath. Soon after, the practitioner would be fully transformed and ready to go. But there's a risk associated with this kind of transformation. For once, the sorcerer must return to the place of their transformation before sun rises, or else they would be stuck in animal form forever. Another risk is that if anyone manages to find the gruesome ritual space with the leftover body parts scattered around and destroys the ritual space or messes around with the body parts, the practitioner would be stuck in animal form even after they return to the place. Sir Pedro claims that this ability does not come with a price of killing anybody, like it's in the case of the skinwalkers, but the price to pay is even more brutal, since it condemns one's soul forever. Keep in mind, though, that this practice sounds more like malevolent witchcraft, rather than actual pre-Columbian ritual of Nahualism, and may instead be a modern invention of witches who wanted great power in this life with no regard for the afterlife. Perhaps this rite did not exist back then, where the previous 2 fractions of Nahuales existed, hence why it appears so Christianized and modern. So, what are Nahuales? A benevolent guardians of nature and her wonders? A more Sally neutral mind benders who learn how to experience life as an animal, before they will become them? Or evil sorcerers in league with the devil, who tear their bodies apart to transform into beasts to stalk innocents at night? Now, we may not really know the answer to these baffling questions, as it seems that along with the flow of Christianity onto the native Mexican lands, the old beliefs got a new face, and not always a positive one. Time and time again, we learn about how Christianity came to civilize the foreign lands of people believing in their own deities, worshipping them in their own way, only to turn their rich culture upside down, demonize their gods and claim their non-Christian culture and values to be barbaric. How much cultural, physical, and biological harm did the Europeans cause on South American lands is another story, even more painful and gruesome, but to add insult to injury, they also twisted their indigenous beliefs to fit their Christian perspective. This is very heavily seen with Sir Pedro's approach to the ritual of Nahualism, versus the theory of Felipe Garneros, who perceives them not as satanic, but as holy. Interesting middle ground perspective can be seen in that the doctor claims to know, with the Nahuales being neither good nor evil, but working with pretty dark entities nevertheless to be able to transform. How much truth is there to any of these 3 accounts, so different from each other, is not known. We know all too well that the world isn't black and white, and there's variety of good and evil and everything in between to every system of faith, occult practice, or cultural heritage in the world, and from the perspective we are now, it's impossible to gain actual insight on the ancient practices, without talking to someone who's already deep into what their ancestors genuinely practiced. But is it even possible? My Slavic heritage have been pretty much torn away by Christianity, and the elements that survived got so entangled together with the church, that it's hard to differentiate what's legit, what's changed to fit Christian box, and what was never true to begin with. Same may be true for the colonization period of the Americas. Even though I love Latin American culture deeply, I do not belong to it, and what was shared by me in this material was only gathered because in this day and age, with access to the internet, the language barrier becomes less and less of an obstacle in gathering information from all the corners around the world, and there appear to still be people who practice the ways that were before the modern times came to be. It's true for most sects of Taoism and Buddhism, it's true to a few denominations of old European Nordic faith, and it is likewise true for the people of the Americas who had balls to not lose their cultural heritage so easily. But with such contradicting statements, when even the people who used to practice the arts cannot agree on the nature of it, I guess all we can do is to settle on what each one of us personally believes. And so, what do you think?